Here are some antique Nahanto that we based this project on. Here is David thermocycling the blade to refine the grain.
flowing water, so yeah. Well, Joe, I think we're just about ready. Keep some happy thoughts. Talk to you soon. So, I don't know how much more I can get it down. How about if it goes through that? Okay. Oh yeah. Back in for a little bit.
Wanted to shoot a video today on something that's very important in my life, and that is the art of Japanese swordsmanship and the appreciation of the Japanese sword. I've long found through the Japanese sword arts a way to center myself and focus myself in life. And when I do have issues or problems, if I'm always going back to what kept me in line with that, I've always found a way to set my compass back and get back on point. Throughout those years of kendo, iaido, and different forms of Japanese sword arts, I've come to appreciate a certain type of katana. Because of the kendo background, I've learned to really like longer sukas, longer handles, 13-inch sukas in particular. Even in my boken, I set them up with a 13-inch suka, 26 to 27-inch blade. That has become my ideal size and length katana. Throughout my years of commissioning swords, and I have antique Nihonto and I have new forged swords. And before we get too far, I don't want to get into any kind of semantic about traditional Japanese sword arts. These are modern adaptations of the Japanese katana. Simply put, they're what maybe the sword would have evolved to, or they're done by modern makers with appreciation to the Japanese lineage and heritage of the Japanese swords. Long ago, I started commissioning blades to my specification, the longer sukas and the 26 to 27-inch blades. The first one was about 18 years ago, and that was made by Louis Mills and Rick Barrett. And this is probably the most traditional piece we'll talk about today. This was forged of iron ore sand. It's gorgeous. It's many, many layers. Everything on it is very traditional. It's a gorgeous blade with an art polish. It is probably, when it comes to my new forged swords, the most traditional piece in my collection, and certainly probably one of the most beautiful. But it is to my dimensions, the longer suka, 26.5-inch blade probably. There's a separate video on this. It's just a magnificent piece that I cherish. The next is from a dear friend, the great late Phil Hartsfield. This was the last katana Phil ever made, and I'm privileged to own it. It was made to my specifications, 13-inch suka, 26-inch blade, and this is what Phil interpreted the katana to be if it was used today. It is a wicked, wicked, wicked cutter, and one of the most evil cutting swords I've ever owned. Magnificent piece, and it couldn't be any more different than this sword in its construction, but in its size, length, and shape, they're very similar. So where this evolves to why I like the 13-inch suka, and that is for many reasons. From my kendo background, I like my grip staggered wider than an 11-inch suka would allow me to do. I like the longer handle as a stop on my cuts, and I've just generally evolved to liking this configuration. The katana series built to my dimensions won't be complete if I didn't have one from David Mirabile. Now, many of you know David as a very accomplished Alaskan bladesmith. David has an innate ability to make the most evil weapons I've ever seen. He would have been at home on a battlefield 500 years ago, forging stuff in a blacksmith on a battlefield as he is today working in his own shop. If he puts his hands to it, it's wicked. So David and I had a lot of discussions about what the third series or the third piece in this series would be. All right. I wanted something different, but to my dimensions again, that 26 to 27-inch blade, 13-inch suka. We really wanted something that kind of harkened back. Now again, this isn't, I'm not getting into, I want to get into Japanese sword history semantics, but I was looking for a blade that would have been probably when the tachi was evolving into the katana after the Mongol invasions, Shobu ZUKURI style blade, just a beast of a katana that showed a lot of throwback to the Tachis, longer curved handle, Shobu ZUKURI blade, jacked up sori. So what I asked David to make me is this twisted out, what I would say right after the Mongol invasion period type katana that would basically be my last battle katana that I'd ever be getting. David did that graciously. You've watched the whole video of him forging the sword and making the sword. Again, this is not saying anything about traditional Japanese sword arts. This is about modern interpretation of the Japanese sword arts. This is a mono steel blade. It was clay hardened in water, so some of the aspects are traditional. David has this fantastic way of taking the modern and mixing it with the old and making something that is incredible, a true piece of art. David, oh, Mirabile is here. We flew him in from Alaska. We're heading to the Blade Show. My brother from another mother, David Mirabile, whose phone was barking, who kind of wrecked the whole thing.
Sorry.
So super exciting for me. I've always wanted David to make me a katana. He's done me a ton of walks and big tantos, and it's been nothing but wicked cutting tools. Well, thank you, brother. Our interpretation of what those swords would have looked like right when they were switching over, longer curved suka, the wrought iron suba he did on this. The wrought iron suba he did on this is insane. It's just, the grain and everything in it is crazy. Wooden saya, then carbon fiber wrapped, then painted black. All your fittings are actually carbon fiber. Fuchikashira is, what are they made of? Silver?
Silver. Yeah.
Solid silver. That's the only thing on this sword that David didn't make. We imported these from Japan. And again,
the Manuki and
the Manuki and the Fuchikashira, they're solid silver. They're dragonfly motif. And again, all these swords are dragonfly motif. I have a thing for Tombogiri, dragonfly cutter. It's what most of my sword themes that I run with is the Tombogiri. Tombogiri originally was a spear. So these are all Tombogiri. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous everything on it. We went with Saya Ito down it, and there's a reason for that. This is all epoxy resin soaked carbon fiber wrap. David, explain a little bit about that. Loud.
Well, one of the things is most people generally, if they use a wrap, a cord wrap of some type, they wrap it dry and then apply the epoxy to it, which is fine. I mean, it's going to hold up to pretty much anything. But I mean, I have built boats in my background. I have worked with fiberglass a little bit. And so thinking, I'm going, geez, you don't just lay dry fiberglass down and resin over it. So, I mean, I use the same techniques applied to this. I saturate my resin first. I use a marine resin, UV qualities, so it's protected. But that just helps to give it it becomes a solid piece. It's not just a piece of cord covered with resin. If I wanted to take this off to change it, which I have had to do in the past, not on this piece, but I would have to grind the whole side off, put in a vise, and actually break these apart. So, I mean, this is bulletproof.
So, truly end of days type sword. Phil brushes, or used to brush, God bless him, his resin onto his handles after he wraps them and it soaks in. David applies it wet. So what you get is a lot cleaner look. You can see the Manuki clearly. You can see the Same underneath. Beautiful black Same on this, silver fittings, wrought iron Suba. This whole saya ito thing was done for a couple things. First and foremost, to lock it into your obi when it's in. Hence also this, which you don't see on a lot of swords, but that's a very, very cool little part of a saya that most sayas don't have. This one does, this one does not. This is meant to stay where it's put, but also when you're trying to draw fast and cut, and you've seen me do drop cuts with apples and things like that, with smaller woks and things like that, you're always scared of blowing through a reel. And I have some sayas that are paper thin, and you just worry about when you're really trying to go fast, blowing through that saya and crippling yourself. This entire saya is all as hard as a rock up in here. It's all resin soaked carbon fiber ito. So you've got a lot of reinforcement in there. Again, just another safety precaution. As for the blade, this we went with one of my favorite blade designs, which is Shobu ZUKURI. Now, supposedly the Shobu ZUKURI blades were brought in after the Japanese were having problems cutting through the boiled Mongol armory, boiled leather of the Mongol armor. God, sorry. The Shobu ZUKURI, the iris leaf type tip, supposedly dealt with that better. So this is Shobu ZUKURI. I don't know if you can make it out. We'll get better. You've seen the making of the video, so you see it. It's got a gorgeous, gorgeous temper line. We did not etch this blade. Traditional Japanese swords, not that this is traditional, but we still didn't want to make a zombie sword. Traditional Japanese swords, the hamon is brought out through polishing. This has what we would call a battle polish on it. We're going to be using it. In the light, you can look down this blade and see, and you'll see it in the pictures from the making video, a beautiful, beautiful temper line that is about perfect. It's right where it needs to be. The sori on this blade is crazy. Excuse me, sir. Longer suka. Everything about this blade would make it seem that this thing's going to be exactly what, in our mind, those Japanese smiths, when they were thinking about the thousands of Mongol hordes pouring on their beaches, would have wanted to have in their hand. Something that would go through anything. So let's see how it cuts. We're going to cut with this sword. And again, I just appreciate my brother coming all the way down here from Alaska. Love you, buddy. Yeah. And my good buddy Nick, who's videoing this right now. Well, didn't want to end that segment without putting it on the rack next to its. So right there is my finished trilogy of a bunch of makers that I have a ton of respect for, and all very similar in dimensions, but very different styles. The old style, the adaptation of Phil, and a blend between the old and the new, which is beast-like in every way. All right, what better place to end this sword video than at the 2021 Blade Show Diskin USA booth with a bunch of great people, Matt Diskin, Jason Knight, David Mirabile. A lot of people saw the sword, they loved it. We're gonna do a bunch more cutting with it, a bunch more fun. Jason.
Nice. You like it.
So, everybody be safe. Thanks for looking.
Stop.
Make a scary face, Jason.
Yo, move your head.